Hello and welcome to part 2 of my Arkham Horror video series where I show you how to play Arkham Horror, show you some sample gameplay, and then actually give you a final review on the game. In part 2, I'm actually going to show you setup and then actual gameplay for Arkham Horror. Go ahead and get started. The first thing you need to do after you got everything all laid out for Arkham Horror is you need to start placing all the clue tokens on the board. And the way you put these clue tokens is every one of these locations is either going to have a green diamond on it or it's going to have a red diamond on it. The difference between those two is a red diamond shows unstable location where a gate can potentially pop up and where monsters can potentially pop up more often. The red locations are the unstable ones and the green ones are generally the safe ones. What you want to do is put a clue token on every one of the unstable, unsafe red diamond locations. It's a total of 11 clue tokens, but you put one in every one of the locations to set up the board. Once you got the clue tokens placed out, you need to get the total of investigators. Every player needs to get at least one investigator. Now I'm just going to play a simple 2 investigator game since it's just myself showing you this. There's 2 ways you can do this. You can either shuffle these up and pick totally randomly, or if you've had people who are experienced and aren't going to slow down the process too much, you let the players pick out their favorite investigator if that's what they choose. I'm actually just going to go ahead and play randomly and pick out 2 investigators. We're going to get Carolyn Fern, the psychologist, and we're going to get Joe Diamond, the private eye. The rest of these investigators, they're not going to be used unless one of my people gets devoured early, so I can pretty much put these off to the side or throw them back in the game box. Each one of these investigators is going to get a stand-up token representing them. That's also going to be placed on the board. Carolyn Fern, the psychologist, we look at her card, it's going to tell us that she starts in Arkham Asylum. And then Joe Diamond, if we look at his thing, it's going to tell us that he starts in the police station. That's where those 2 investigators start the game. Once we got our investigators chosen for our players, next thing we need to do is we need to figure out what exactly ancient one we're going to go ahead and face. Again, like choosing investigators if you're good or if you want to challenge, because all these ancient ones play differently and some are definitely more challenging than other ones. You can either pick the one you want to fight or you just choose randomly. We're going to go ahead and pick randomly, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to be facing Yig. The rest of these can be discarded. We won't be using them for the game. Once we've chosen our great old one, we want to make sure we check the text to see how this great old one is going to modify the game of Arkham Horror just a little bit. In the case of Yig, Yig is the guy who's based on all the cultists, and the cultists are kind of monsters we can draw from the monster bag. He's going to make worshippers are his cultists are a little more powerful, so anytime you draw a cultist, you got to make sure you remember what their stats are actually a little bit differently. And his special ability is that anytime a cultist is defeated, he's actually going to get a doom token. Also, if an investigator is ever lost in time or in space, Yig is also going to get an additional Doom token. Yig can actually make for a pretty quick game. He only has 10 Doom tokens, so it's pretty often when you're fighting Yig, you end up actually fighting Yig himself versus getting all the gates closed. So, luckily he's not too tough to defeat comparatively to all the other great old ones, but generally he makes for a much quicker game. Next thing we need to do is we need to give each one of our investigators their items. They're going to get their fixed possessions, and then they're also going to get their random possessions that we're going to get from drawing from the decks. For each one of them, we simply go through the decks and pick out any fixed possessions they may have, if they have any of them, and then we're going to randomly draw for our random possessions based on exactly what it says our investigator should get. We've got our investigators all set up. We've actually managed to do some pretty good lucky draws. Joe Diamond himself is starting on with a 45 automatic, a Tommy gun, some whiskey, and the luck skill. His speed is 6, sneak is 1, fight is 2, will is 3, lore is 2, luck is 1. Now, on the other hand, Carolyn got extremely lucky. She managed to start off with a rifle, a map of Arkham City, which is allow her to move a little bit further, which is really good because she has a very low movement skill herself. She starts with a Necronomicon, which allows her to get some spells, which is great because she starts with a pretty potential high lore. And she managed to also draw an Elder Sign. She's starting with a speed of 3, sneak of 0, fight of 2, will of 3, lore of 5 for that Necronomicon, and finally a luck of 2. She also has a lore skill that she can use whenever she spends those clue tokens. I've also got all the monsters put inside what I use for the monster bag. Now, the game doesn't come with a cloth bag or a cup of any kind. And you are supposed to be drawing these monsters totally at random, so I put everything in a cloth bag so they can all be drawn completely at random so you don't see exactly what kind of bad monster you're supposed to be fighting. It is supposed to be a little bit of a surprise when you draw those out. I've got all the decks shuffled up, and the only thing left to do is to draw the first Mythos card and figure out where the first gate and where the first monster is going to appear on the board and find out exactly what bad things are going to happen to us. The only thing we have to worry about with the Mythos card is we can take the top card as long as it's not a rumor card. If it happens to be a rumor card, we're going to discard it and draw another Mythos card until we get a non-rumor card. Then we're going to go ahead and resolve it. The first thing we need to do anytime we draw a Mythos card is we need to figure out where the first gate is going to open up. And this card tells us that the first gate is going to open up in the woods. So we're going to have our face down stack of gate tokens that we shuffled randomly, so we don't know exactly which gate we're going to get first. We're going to draw the first gate and we're going to put it in the woods. Now remember, if there's ever a clue token, a location where gate opens up, that clue token is going to be removed because there can never be a clue token where there happens to be a gate. Now, a little segue here. There's two different ways to play the game here. There is a variant, it's an official variant for the game where you can play with all these gates played upside down, so you don't know exactly what kind of gate you're about to face. Some people like to do it. I'm actually one of the people who likes to play that way because I like the surprise. You don't know exactly what kind of gate you're about to get, where it's going to take you to, and thematically it makes more sense to me. But in the basic rules, whenever you reveal a gate, you're actually supposed to reveal it so the players know exactly what kind of gate they're dealing with. And of course, anytime we successfully open up a gate, we need to add a Doom token to the Doom track. So Yig now has 1 Doom token on the Doom track, 9 more Doom tokens, and Yig wakes up. After we have placed the gate, the Doom token, the next thing we need to do is figure out what kind of monster is going to crawl out of this gate and start harassing our investigators. Randomly draw from the bag and figure out exactly what kind of monster we get to deal with. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to draw a Dole, which is a pretty nasty little creature that takes 3 successes to defeat. And he also hits really, really hard, so not exactly something we want to be dealing with, but we're going to have to deal with it if we want to manage to get through that gate. After we've figured out what kind of monster we're going to have, the next thing we need to do is figure out where the next clue token is going to appear. And 6 says the next clue token is going to appear in the Historical Society. So we're going to add 1 clue token to the Historical Society, bringing it up to 2 clue tokens. And now we need to figure out if any of the monsters on the board are going to move. This Mythos card says that any monsters that have a circle on it, a square, or a diamond on it are going to move. And since our Dole happens to have a circle on it, we're going to move based on where that circle happens to be on the black or the white bar. It's not really going to matter because the black and the white arrow both are going to take us the same direction, but just to show you how the game plays, we're going to see that our green circle is on the white bar, so we're going to look for a white arrow, and he's going to move that direction. Now remember, we have to remember the color of the monster. Black monsters, like the Dole, are only going to move 1 space, so he's going to go from the woods to uptown streets, and he's going to wait there for the next investigator to haplessly stumble along and potentially get devoured. Finally, we would need to resolve the thematic text for the Mythos card. The Mythos card here is the South Side Strangler is suspected. It's a headline card. It says, however, the press is mistaken, and the murders were caused by 2 monsters that are released in the South Side streets. So at this point, we need to draw 2 monster cards, and they're both going to be added to the South Side streets. The first monster card we're going to get is an Elder Thing. Definitely not a good creature we have to fight. The next thing we're going to get is Amigo, which is a flying creature. Again, not a really good thing to fight, and we're starting off pretty bad. We already have 3 monsters on the board. Remember, the monster limit in a 2 investigator game is 5 monsters on the board. If a 6th or further monster appears on the board, and we haven't managed to start defeating some of these monsters, they're all going to start going to the outskirts and start raising up the terror track, making life very difficult for intrepid investigators. Now, one of those small little rules that sometimes people forget when they're first learning how to play Arkham Horror is that monsters that appear due to Mythos cards don't need a gate to stay on the game board. It's only monsters that appear from Arkham encounters and monsters that occur from Otherworld encounters that appear without a gate that don't stay on the board. They're either evaded or fought, and then they disappear. Now that we've got the game board set up, it's time to begin Arkham Horror. We start with the very first phase of the game, which is the upkeep phase. Now for the first round of the game, the upkeep phase, especially with the equipment that we have equipped with our investigators, is not going to take too much time. We're basically going to refresh anything that we spent on prior turns, which doesn't exist. We're going to do any upkeep cards that we happen to have in our possessions, which we don't have. Then we're going to adjust our skill sliders based on our current focus. Now, my original strategy when I first started my investigators out was I wanted to start Joe Diamond with a high movement, so he can basically run across the board and pick up any location to happen to get 2 lucky clue tokens. Now, since I started him with a 6 speed, he could have easily went all the way from the police station all the way to the Historical Society, grabbed the 2 clue tokens plus the 3 he starts with, which would have been 5, which would have been enough to permanently seal any gate on the game board, which would have given us one heck of a leg up to start the game. Unfortunately, that Mythos card kind of caused us a lot of problems because we spawned this Elder Thing and this Migo that are both blocking our way to the Historical Society. So I need to contemplate that, and I also need to figure out what exactly Carolyn wants to do on her turn, especially since she has that Necronomicon and that Elder Sign, and she definitely wants to start getting gates closed if she can, and also helping our investigators with their mission. Looking at our current stats and looking at our focus level of our focus level of 3 for Joe Diamond, our focus level of 2 for Carolyn Fern, and what I want them to do on their turns. I'm going to leave their stats exactly where they're at. We're not going to modify their skills at all. We're going to go ahead and go with what we got, and hopefully it's enough to at least get started. That ends the first phase, or the upkeep phase of the turn. We now move to the movement phase. For the movement phase, Carolyn Fern is the first player for the first round, or for the first round of this game. So what we need to do is figure out what we want to do with Carolyn Fern. Her current movement is set for 3. She has the map of Arkham, which gives her 1 additional movement for a total of 4. And we also have the book that we want to use to try to get some spells, which is going to cost us 2 movement points. So we basically have 2 movement points to play with thanks to that map. So we basically want to look at all the locations and figure out which locations can be the most beneficial to us. If we go to Independence Square, we see that there's a good chance that we may get a clue token from one of the cards. We also see that there's a good chance we'll get a unique item. We can tell that by looking at the symbols if we go there. If we go to the Bank of Arkham, we can definitely get some extra money, which may be helpful to us. Or we can get a good chance of getting other items also, which is also within 2 movement points if we want to do that. Or we can forego using the book for the extra spell, move up to 4 spaces, and possibly go all the way over here to the newspaper, where we have a good chance of getting clue tokens. Also a good chance of making money. Or we can go over here where we have a very good chance of getting a unique item if we have something to hand in, which we don't. Or we can get a normal item. These are all things we need to decide exactly what we want to do with our first turn for Carolyn Fern. We're going to go ahead and go to the Independence Square right over here, which is within our movement and is still going to allow us to use our book to get our possible spell. So we're going to move 2 spaces, 1, 2, and we're going to end our movement there. So since we know we're ending our movement here, we're going to go ahead and take that clue token, add it to our board. And then what we're going to do, since we have 2 remaining movement points, because we exhausted the map for one of our movements to move over there, we're going to go ahead and exhaust the book and see if we can get some extra spells. The book we have is the Necronomicon, and basically what it says is if we exhaust the book and then spend 2 movement, we do have 2 movement left over, we can make a lore -2 check. If we succeed, we're going to lose 2 sanity, and then we're going to get to draw a spell. But it's definitely worth it, because Carolyn Fern has the ability during the upkeep to repair any sanity damage she takes at 1 point per upkeep, which in the long run makes her actually a pretty good spellcaster. So we definitely want to start getting her some spells. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a lore check. Our current lore skill is set at 5, and it's a lore -2 check, so we get to roll 3 dice. And if we succeed, we're going to take 2 sanity damage, and we're going to gain 1 spell. And we roll 3 dice. Our lore of 5 -2 is 3 dice, and we're looking for at least 1 success. Success, remember, is a 5 or a 6. We managed to get a 5, and a 6 for a total of 3 successes. We only needed 1, so the Necronomicon successfully works. We lose 2 points of sanity. Not a big deal for her, because remember, she can repair her sanity damage to herself on every one of her upkeep phases if she likes. And then we get to choose a spell, and we're going to get the Dread Curse of Azeroth. And I'm sorry, I should say the Great Curse of Azathoth. Sorry, like I said, I admitted, I'm not very good at pronouncing these Arkham Cthulhu Mythos types names. I admit I'm terrible at it, but at least I admit my fault. The Dread Curse is a great spell. It's going to allow her to add 9 dice to any combat check as long as she successfully casts that spell beforehand. It is going to cost her 2 sanity to cast, but it is definitely going to be a spell that's worth it for her to cast, especially with her ability to repair her sanity. It's now Joe Diamond's turn. Now remember, Joe Diamond has a movement of 6, and we have an objective for him. And we're actually going to go ahead and see if we can take out a few of these monsters that are blocking away, especially since we don't like 3 monsters on the board in the beginning of the game. We have a movement of 6. We're going to move 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to stop on this space. And we either have to evade these monsters or continue moving, which isn't really going to happen considering our sneak skill is 0, and both of these are -2 to sneak. I'd have to spend clue tokens just for even a chance to get past these guys. And plus my objective was to beat these guys up anyway. So we're going to stop here, and we're going to go ahead and encounter these monsters, and I get to encounter them in whichever order I want. I'm going to go ahead and encounter the Migo first, for the simple fact that it has the best reward if I defeat it. If I defeat it, I get to get a unique item for the unique item deck. So I'm going to flip over to the Migo, and we're going to see that the first thing I have to do is make a sanity check at will -1. If I fail, I'm going to take 2 points of sanity damage, which isn't good for somebody who only starts with 4 sanity. My current will stat is 3. -1 is going to allow me to roll 2 dice to see if I can avoid taking sanity damage versus this horrible otherworldly creature. I'm going to roll, and luckily, I'm going to get 1 success. Again, 1 success is all I need, and I'm not going to take any sanity damage from this creature, so now I get to either flee from it or I get to fight it. Well, Joe Diamond's a brave kind of guy, so he's not going to flee from this encounter. He's definitely going to encounter it and fight it. So to fight it, I need to roll my total of my fight plus any weapon I happen to be using, plus or minus his penalty or bonus to fight, which happens to be a 0 from the Migo. So my basic fight stat right now is 2, so I get 2 dice to roll, plus I'm using the Tommy gun, which is going to give me an additional 6. So I get a total of 8 dice I get to roll, and again I'm looking for 1 success because it only has 1 blood drop. I only need 1 success on 8 dice to defeat this creature. Okay, on my first roll, I only roll in 5 of the 8 dice I get. I already got 3 successes. I got 3 more dice to roll, and I get a total of 4 successes, which is definitely more than enough to defeat this Migo. I get this Migo as a trophy, and if you read the back of it, it says if you pass a combat check against the Migo, return to the box and draw 1 unique item. Unfortunately, this means this isn't a creature I get to keep as a trophy. It's permanently removed from the game, but it does give me 1 unique item to add to Joe Diamond. We're going to draw a unique item, and we happen to get a healing stone, which is actually a fantastic item, especially for Joe Diamond. What it's going to allow me to do is once every upkeep, I can heal 1 sanity or 1 stamina, and this card stays on my investigator until the great ancient old one awakens, at which point this will be discarded. So every round I basically get a free heal for Joe Diamond as long as I keep this. Definitely a nice item to have. That's the end of the first fight, but unfortunately we still have 1 more monster here to encounter, which we have to either evade or we have to fight or flee from it. So the first thing we're going to do, since we don't want to evade because we know we're at -2 to our evade check, and since our evade skill is based on our sneak, and our sneak is currently at 1, there's no chance we can evade it pretty much. And remember, if you fail an evade, he gets a free hit, and the last thing I want to do is take a point of damage from a monster. We're going to go ahead and decide to fight this monster. So the first thing we have to do is we have to fail, or I should say pass, but looking at the penalties, we're going to be failing our sanity check. Now our current will stat for Joe Diamond happens to be 3. Unfortunately, our current penalty for a horror check against this horrible creature is also -3, so we get to roll 0 dice to survive our horror check. Now I could waste clue tokens on this, but it's a little early in the game, and I definitely want to get these extra 2 clue tokens. And honestly, we can take the 2 damage, especially since we can heal it during each one of our upkeeps. So we're going to fail our sanity check. We're going to take 2 points of sanity damage, and that's going to leave poor Joe Diamond from 4 down to 2 sanity, but at least he gets to try to defeat this horrible spawn. We also have the whiskey we could use to reduce the loss of the sanity, but we're going to keep that whiskey just in case we need it at a later turn. It seems a little bit too early to be using that item right now. We're going to go ahead and fight this creature with our Tommy gun. Again, we're not going to try to flee from it because we know our evade skill is definitely not up to snuff. So we know that we have a 2 fight plus 6 for our Tommy gun is a total of 8. And this creature, like the Migo, has no penalty to our fight, so we get 8 dice to roll. We're looking for at least 2 successes to defeat it because this creature happens to have 2 blood drops. I rolled 5 dice. I got 2 successes so far. Remember, I got a total of 8 dice. I'm going to roll the other 3 dice. Then we get a total of 3 successes, a 5 and 2 6s. Remember, I only need to get 2 successes to defeat this creature. So I managed to defeat this Elder thing, and I defeated both of the monsters that Joe Diamond had to fight without taking any stamina damage. The nice thing, at least about the Elder thing, unlike the Migo, is that I can actually keep it as a trophy, and trophies are great because you can actually spend them around the board. Now, I didn't cover this too much in the tutorial because I didn't want to overcomplicate things, but there's some locations around the board that says if you come here and you discard trophies to equal to a certain value, you get an extra benefit. Such as if you go to Ma's boarding house, it says if you spend 2 gate trophies, or if you spend a total of 10 toughness worth of monsters, you can get an ally to join your group. Well, the amount of toughness this monster had, for example, was 2. So if I discard a total of 10 toughness worth of monsters while I was at that location and interacting with it, I could actually recruit an ally. Now all these spacers are going to cost 10 toughness or 5 toughness, or 1 gate trophy, or 2 gate trophies. So that's where you spend them, and those are locations all over the game board. So we definitely want to try to start gathering as many of those trophies as we can, because they're definitely going to help us overcome the horrors in Arkham. That ends the movement phase for both of our investigators. Now remember, anytime an investigator is forced to stop and fight, even if he had movement points left over, like Joe Diamond did, he did have movement points left over, which you could have used the move. If at any time you have to fight a monster on your movement phase, your movement ends, you lose the remaining amount of movement points you had. So Joe Diamond's movement is over. Even though he defeated 2 monsters, which is definitely going to be something to help our investigators, that does close out the movement phase. We now get to start the Arkham encounter phase, and Joe Diamond is not going to have an Arkham encounter because he's currently in the streets, but Carolyn Fern definitely is because she's currently in Independence Square. So we need to draw a card from the white deck, which is right here, since we're currently in one of the white sections off of downtown. So we draw the deck, we pick up the entire deck of 7 cards, and we're going to shuffle the deck. Remember, always shuffle the deck before you draw. We're going to take the top card, and we're going to look for the instructions that are going to tell us what to do based on our current location, which happens to be Independence Square. Now we'll see we got Arkham Asylum, the Bank of Arkham, and Independence Square. So I'm going to read the text for what happens when we're at Independence Square. The card says, for Independence Square, a shadow falls across you from no apparent source, and you shiver with more than just cold. Pass a will -1 check, or lose 1 stamina and 1 sanity. So we need to look at Carolyn Fern, find out what her current will stat is. We see that her will stat is 3. So we need to make a will -1 check, which is 2 dice, and we're looking for 1, 5, or 6 to see if we can succeed. We're going to roll the dice, and we're going to fail, so we're going to find out what the fail results are. Remember, the card said is if we fail, we're going to lose 1 stamina and 1 sanity token, which is going to bring us down to 3 sanity and 3 stamina. Not quite defeated, but we're definitely hurt. This card has been dealt with. We're going to put it back on the bottom of the deck. Remember, the cards are not discarded. There are no discard piles on this game. So it's quite possible through shuffling that card could pop up again as one of the draws for one of the future players in any one of these downtown districts. That's the difficulty, and that prevents you from counting the cards in the game and making assumptions, adding to the challenge of Arkham Horror. Now, Joe Diamond, for his Arkham encounter phase, is not going to encounter anything because he's not in any locations. Remember, you only have encounters in locations. He's in one of the city streets, so we're safe. So we move on to the 4th phase, which is the Other Worlds encounters. And we do not have any investigators in any of those locations, so we can just pass that phase and move on to the 5th phase, which is the Mythos phase. And the first player, and the first player only, draws the top Mythos card, and that card is going to be resolved. The first thing we're going to look at with the new Mythos card is we're going to figure out if a new gate is going to open, or if we're going to have a monster surge, or something else is going to happen. We're going to see that a gate is going to open at the Unvisited Isle, which is right here, which currently has a clue token. So that clue token is going to be disappearing. And since a new gate is opening, we need to add a Doom token to the Doom track. Yig is now at 2 tokens on the Doom track out of 10, putting us ever so much closer to Yig waking up. So we draw a dimensional portal. It's going to be put on the Unvisited Isle, and we're going to get a portal to the Dreamlands, and then we need to draw a monster and figure out what exactly is going to spawn in this location. We're going to get a ghoul, which is going to spawn at this location, and that's the end of the portal phase and the monster phase and the Doom track. We now need to figure out exactly where the new clue token is going to appear. It tells us that the new clue token is going to appear in the science building, so we draw 1 clue, added to the science building. If any player goes here, they can pick up 1 or both of those clue tokens, or neither if that's what they choose. And now we need to figure out exactly which monster is going to move, and if any monster is going to move on the board. We're going to look and see that anyone who's on a hexagon, a line, a triangle, or a star is going to move. Well, this monster, the Dole, is a circle, so he is not going to move at all. While the Ghoul happens to be a hexagon, and we're going to see that he's going to move, and he's going to follow along the white arrow, and since he's a black border, he's only going to move 1 square. So the Ghoul is going to move 1 location over to the Merchant District. After we resolve the monster movement, we only have 2 monsters on the board, so we're safe, and we're not beyond the player limit for the amount of monsters in the area. Remember, player limit is the amount of players plus 3 monsters, 2 investigator game. So we have a total of 5 monsters in Arkham City itself. Any excess monsters are going to go towards the outskirts and work towards raising a terror track, so we definitely want to keep the monsters down to a controllable amount. We now resolve the rest of the card, and we're going to see that this is a headline card, which reads as follows. Scientist warns of dimensional rift. Headline. All dimensional shamblers and all hounds of Tandalos and Arkham are returned to the cup. Or the bag in my case, because I use a bag. If at least one monster returns to the cup, raise the terror level by 1. Well, fortunately, the only thing I got on the board is a ghoul and a dole, so I don't have either one of those monsters in Arkham anywhere. But if I did, I'd remove them from the board, and I'd raise the terror level up 1 point. And if the terror level goes up 1, one random ally from my potential allies that I can hire by going to Ma's boarding house is going to permanently leave the game, making things just a little more difficult on our investigators. That completes this Mythos phase. It also completes the end of this round. So the first player marker is going to move from Carolyn Fern to Diamond Joe, and Diamond Joe is going to be the first player in the following round. We go ahead and move back to the upkeep phase, and we start everything all over again. For the upkeep phase, we're going to refresh all our cards that were used on the prior turn that said exhaust to use this card, which is a couple of our cards like the Map of Arkham and also Necronomicon. And then we're going to do any of our upkeep actions that we wish to do. There's definitely 2 upkeep actions we want to do. Carolyn Fern has her special ability that she can use to increase her sanity by 1 point. If she's taken any sanity damage, she can also heal other players' sanity if they happen to be in the same space. Joe Diamond is definitely not in the same space. And now we got to remember that Joe Diamond also managed to get that healing stone, which he can exhaust to go ahead and gain 1 stamina or 1 sanity. Since he's down 2 sanity points, he's going to take 1 sanity point worth of healing to heal himself back up to 3. So he's only down 1 point of sanity. That does exhaust the healing stone, and that's all the upkeep actions we want to do for our heroes. So now they have the ability to adjust their skills if they want to. And looking at the skills where they stand right now, what the player board looks like, I think we're going to stay with our skills right where they're at. Actually, you know what? I take that back. We're actually going to adjust Joe Diamond's skill stats. We're going to raise his speed sneak slider 2 spaces to the left. So he's going to go from 6 speed, 1 sneak, to 4 speed, 3 sneak. Because we're going to go ahead over to this location. We don't really need a lot of speed. And we want to make sure we're not going to get an overly bad card that we can't really take care of because our skills are too off-centered. So that's what we're going to do for the slider for that. Remember, he can actually has 3 points of focus, so he can move his skills up to 3 spaces in either direction. We're definitely going to keep Carolyn's stats the way they are. That's going to end the upkeep phase, and now we move to the movement phase. Now for the movement phase, Joe Diamond is the new first player, so they get to do their movement first. Now we have 2 options. When we go after this dole, which really isn't going to help us too much right now for the simple fact that if he gets these clue tokens, he can try to get into this gate, try to move through that outer world, and come back and try to seal it, because that'll put him on a total of 5 clue tokens. So that's probably what our strategy is going to be. And then Carolyn's probably going to move back to the asylum, use the Necronomicon to get an extra spell, and then she's going to fix all that damage she's going to be taking to her sanity. So that's our basic strategy for the movement phase. So for the movement phase, Joe Diamond's going to move over here. It's going to cost him 1 movement point, even though he has a total of 4 movement. If he doesn't end his turn there, he can't claim these clue tokens. So he moves here, ends his turn, claims these 2 clue tokens, and that's the end of his movement phase. Carolyn is going to move 1, 2 to Arkham Asylum. She's going to exhaust the Map of Arkham, so she gets 1 movement from the map item, and she's going to get 1 movement from her speed, which leaves her with 2 speed points left to spend. She's going to use those 2 speed points to use the Necronomicon again. And then she needs to make a lore -2 check. Her lore is currently at 5, so she rolls 3 dice. She's looking for at least 1 success. She easily gets it. She's going to get a spell. And she's going to take 2 points of sanity damage. Not a big deal, because we're back to Arkham, where we can go ahead and fix all that stuff by spending a little bit of money. And the spell we're going to get is the Red Sign of Shud Ma'el, which is a nice ability, allows us to weaken monsters on the board if we cast a spell beforehand. So it's definitely a very nice spell to have, so we're very happy to add that to our repertoire. That's going to end her movement phase. She can't heal yet because it's not going to happen to the Arkham Encounter phase. That's the end of both of our investigators' movement phases. We now move to the Arkham Encounter phase. For the Arkham Encounter phase, Joe Diamond is our starting player, so they have to have their encounter first. We're currently over in Southside, which is the brown cards. So we draw the brown locations, we shuffle them up, and then we draw the top card, and we're going to encounter whatever it says happens to us if we happen to be at the Historical Society. The card says, Historical Society. You encounter a friendly old professor from Miskatonic University. If you spend 1 gate trophy, unfortunately we don't have that, it'd be nice if we did, He introduces himself as Professor Armitage and offers to join forces with you. Dig through the ally deck, find Professor Armitage, and add him to your hand as an ally who's joined your group. If it's not available, or if you don't have the gate trophy to spend, you get to gain one random unique item from the unique item deck. We take that card, we put it to the bottom of the draw pile, and we get to draw the top unique item, and we're having a lot of luck today. We're going to get the second Elder Sign. Joe Diamond gets to keep that Elder Sign, and that's going to end his Arkham encounter phase. We now move to Carolyn Fern. Now, Carolyn happens to be at a location where she can either choose to draw an encounter card or she can use the location's ability. She's actually going to use the location's ability, and it says if you spend $2, you get to restore all your sanity that you lost back up to your maximum value. If you spend $0, you gain 1 sanity back. Since we're down to 2 and our maximum is 6, we're going to spend the $2 to gain back 4 sanity, which seems like a really good trade-off, to at least to us right now, especially since it's only going to cost us $2, which isn't a lot of money, to regain 4 sanity. Since we actually encountered the space, we're not going to draw a card from the encounter deck. That's the end of the Arkham encounter phase for both of our investigators. We're going to bypass the Otherworld encounter phase because there's nothing to happen there, and we're going to move directly to the Mythos phase. For the Mythos phase, we're going to draw the top card from the Mythos deck, and we're going to go ahead and figure out exactly what's going to happen to our investigators. The Mythos card we're going to get is called Disturbing the Dead, which is a rumor card, so you get to see how the rumor cards can start messing up our investigators pretty terribly. This card is going to tell us that there's going to be a gate that's going to open up in the Black Cave. The Black Cave is over here. Since there's currently no gate there, we're going to remove the clue token. We're going to draw the top gate, add it to the deck. Make sure that we also add 1 Doom token to the Doom track. Bring the Doom track up to 3 Doom tokens on Yig's Doom track, which is definitely not good. We're also going to draw a monster, and it's going to land right there at the Black Cave. We're going to end up getting a cultist. Now remember, cultists, because we're facing Yig, cultists are a little bit more powerful, and if we defeat a cultist, we add a Doom token to the Doom track. So while we don't want a cultist on the board because we don't want any monsters on the board, we have to take the risk now. If we defeat a cultist, we're bringing Yig one step closer to coming out and devouring all of the world. No pressure at all, though. Unfortunately, this is one of those rare cards that doesn't allow us to add a clue token to the board, so we're a little bit double whammied here because we lost a clue token, which was a potential clue token we could use to help seal gates. We're not getting it replaced with another clue token, and we've added another gate to the board. And remember, if there's ever 8 gates open on the board at one time, and we're up to 1, 2, 3 gates currently open on the board. If we get to 8 gates open on the board at one time, Yig is going to wake up. Again, though, no pressure, right? So now we move on to the monster movement phase. We're going to figure out which monsters, if any, are going to move. We're going to see that any monsters with the hexagon are going to move along the black arrow. Well, we got our ghoul. He's going to follow the black arrow to Miskatonic University Street section. We're then going to look for a slash, a diamond, or a star pattern. The cultist is a moon. And this guy right here is a circle of the dole, so neither one of those guys are going to move. The only monster that's going to end up moving this turn is actually the ghoul itself. Now that we resolved the gate portion, the clue token, which didn't happen in this part, and the monster movement, we figure out exactly what this card is going to do to make our life just a little more difficult in the cities of Arkham, or in the city streets of Arkham. The Disturbing the card says it's a rumor card. Now, a rumor card, remember, a rumor card is going to stay in play until we find out some way to fully resolve that rumor card. And if we draw any further rumor cards, we're going to ignore those rumors again until this rumor has been satisfied. And it says ongoing effect. Roll a die at the end of every single Mythos phase while this card is in play, beginning the turn after it has entered play. So this isn't going to happen this turn, but starting with next turn, it's going to happen. On a roll of 1 or 2, we're going to increase the terror level by 1. So this terror level is slowly going to start raising. And again, once it gets to level 10, the city limits for monsters is gone. If too many monsters enter the city, remember, Yig is going to come out even if the Doom track is not full. The pass fail, and it says pass if a single player manages to discard 2 gate trophies during the Arkham encounter phase while on the Riverton Streets. Riverton Streets is right here. We're going to put a little reminder here that there is something going on in Riverton Streets, which is going to be attached to this card. That's what that reminder is there for. If we discard 2 gate trophies during the Arkham encounter phase while on the Riverton streets, we can return this card to the box so we don't have to deal with it again, and each player gets to draw 1 spell. Now, if the terror level reaches 10 before we manage to deal with this card by going to this location and discarding 2 gate trophies, it says that we return this card to the box and every investigator will be cursed. Here's the bad thing about this. When you fight Yig, if you enter the battle with Yig cursed, you are immediately devoured. You don't even get a chance to fight him. So if we get through this card, manage to not get rid of this card, the terror track gets all the way up to level 10, and then suddenly Yig comes out. We don't even get to fight Yig. Since we're all going to be cursed, we are all going to be devoured. This rumor card stays in play. We'll put it off to the side so we don't forget about it. That's definitely a rumor card we need to take care of very quickly before life gets very difficult for our investigators. That ends the Mythos phase. The new first player token, or the first player token, moves back to Carolyn Fern, and she's now going to be the new first player for the next round, and we move back to the upkeep phase. During the upkeep phase, we're going to refresh all our cards again, which is nice because we have that map, we have the book, and we also have that nice healing stone. So we definitely want to have those items ready to help us. During the upkeep phase, Joe Diamond is going to go ahead and use his healing stone to heal up his last point of sanity that he was down. He's now fully healed, and his stamina is fully healed. Carolyn Fern is fully at her max sanity, but she's down 1 point of stamina with only 3 points of stamina left. The only way she can take care of that is if she goes to St. Mary's Hospital. Don't think we're going to be doing that quite yet because we need to start closing these gates because we have 3 gates open. And there's a good chance another one's going to be opening very quickly. So we've done our upkeep for the cards. We've used our cards that are usable in the upkeep phase. We now can adjust our skills. Joe Diamond knows that he's going to move to the woods, which is only 1, 2, 3 locations away. So he only needs a speed of 3. But he needs to get past this dole so he can get all the way to this gate. So he moves to the gate and start exploring it. Get it explored and get it closed, especially since we have that elder sign. So only needs a move of 3, but he definitely needs as high of a sneak as he can to try to get past this dole. So he's going to move his speed sneak skill from a speed of 4 to a speed of 3, which is going to raise his sneak from 3 to a 4, which gives him a good chance of getting past this dole. That's all we're going to do for the stat adjustments for our investigators. We're now ready for the movement phase. Carolyn Fern is going to go first, and she's the starting player of this round. She has a movement of 3 plus her map of Arkham, which she's going to exhaust to give her a total movement of 4. She's going to move 1, 2, and she's going to move 3. And actually, she didn't even need to exhaust the map, so I'm going to go and take that back. Sorry. She only needed a move of 3. 1, 2, and 3 to get all the way over there. She's now on the unvisited isle with an open gate, which means at the start of the Arkham encounter phase, she's going to be pulled through that gate. We now move to Joe Diamond. He's going to move 1, 2, and then he's going to try to evade this dole. Hopefully, if he can get past it, he can finish his move and get to the woods. Our current sneak skill is 4. The dole is at -1 to get past, so we get to roll 3 dice. Now, if we succeed, we get to continue our movement. If we fail, the dole is going to get a free hit against us, and then we have to fight, and we're going to lose the rest of our movement. So succeeding at this roll is very important for us right now. Luckily, we're going to get 2 successes, which is definitely enough to evade this dole and sneak past it, finish our move in the woods, and that's going to end the movement phase for both of our investigators. We now go to the Arkham encounter phase, and we're going to start with Carolyn Fern, since she's the starting player. Since she is in a location with an open gate, she's going to be sucked into the gate. We're going to read the top of the gate. It's going to tell us that she's going to go to the Dreamlands, so she's going to move to the first location in the Dreamlands. That ends her turn. We're going to go over to Joe Diamond. He's going to go to another dimension. He's going to go to the first location there. And that ends his Arkham encounter phase 2. And this moves us to the Otherworld encounter phase for both of our investigators, starting with Carolyn Fern. This round, we are going to have an Otherworld encounter phase because both of our investigators happen to be in the Otherworld. We're going to start with Carolyn Fern. She's in the Dreamlands, and we're going to draw gate cards until we get one that's either red, blue, yellow, or green. And we see that because of the colored dots on this location. Basically, that means any card we draw, we're going to have an encounter. So we're going to draw the top gate card, and we're going to get a blue card, which happens to match the color, so we're fine. We're going to look to see if any of them say the Dreamlands, and it does say the Dreamlands, so we're going to read what the Dreamlands says, and we're going to have to follow up what it says. The card says for the Dreamlands, pass a lore +0 check. Our lore is currently 5, so we get to roll 5 dice. to fight off your desire to sleep. If you fail, you freeze in the night. You are lost in time and space. If you succeed, return to Arkham. This could actually be a great card. This is going to allow us to possibly close this gate very, very quickly. All we have to do is roll 5 dice and get 1 success. Our lore is 5. We get to roll 5 dice. We're looking for 1 success, and we easily get it. We happen to get 2 successes, which is great for us. And the card says, if you succeed, return to Arkham. So since we're in the Dreamlands, we're going to return to the Dreamlands connected gate right here. And since we successfully explored that location, we're going to get an Explored token, and we have managed to explore that. And when it comes back to the next Arkham encounter phase, we can use our Elder Sign to permanently seal this location. The things are actually starting to look up for investigators now at this point. Now we come over to Joe Diamond. He's going to have another dimension encounter. Again, red, blue, yellow, or green, any one of those card colors will work. We're going to draw and we're going to get a green card. So the first thing we're going to see is if any of them say another dimension. We got the Dreamlands, we got City of the Great Race, or we have other, so we're going to settle the other section of the card. It says, a glimpse of home gives you hope. Gain 1 sanity. Well, unfortunately, we're already at our max sanity, so nothing's going to happen. So while it's a wonderful card, nothing's going to happen for us. So we're going to discard that card back to the gate deck, and we're going to move on to the Mythos phase. The first player draws a Mythos card, which is Carolyn Fern's player, so she's going to draw a card. She's going to get a Mythos card that says, Lodge members watch the night. This card is good news, and it also happens to be bad news for investigators. It's good news because another gate is not going to open, which means we're not going to add another Doom token to extract. The bad thing is that it says that a gate is going to open at the Unvisited Isle, which there's already an open gate there, which means we're going to have a Monster Surge. Remember, a Monster Surge means that for every gate that's open, or for the number of investigators in the game, whichever is greater, is going to be the amount of monsters we're going to spawn. We have 1 gate, 2 gate, 3 gates currently open in a 2 investigator game, so we're going to draw 3 monsters and we're going to add them to the board. The bad thing about this is that there's already 3 monsters on the board, and the current limit for monsters in the game for a 2-player game is 5. So the first 2 monsters are going to be added. The 3rd monster is going to end up going to the outskirts. So the first thing we're going to end up doing is we're going to get a witch, which is going to go to the Unvisited Isle. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get another cultist, which is going to go to the Black Cave. And then finally, the zombie is going to end up going to the outskirts because that puts us over 5. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 monsters currently on the board. Now remember, since we're playing a 2-player game, as soon as we add a 7th monster to the outskirts, all the monsters currently outskirts are going to be discarded. And then the Doom track is going to go up 1 level, which is going to remove an ally from the game, which is going to bring us 1 step closer to making Yig come out. Next, we're going to add another clue token to the board. Luckily, we're getting another clue token in the Science Building, which is going to put up to 3, making this a pretty darn good location for investigators to start thinking about heading to. Especially since if a gate opens up there, before we can get there, we're going to lose access to all of those clue tokens. Now we're going to look for monsters that are going to move. Any monsters that are a circle are going to move. Now the witch happens to be a circle, but she also happens to be in a spot with an investigator currently at, so she's actually not going to move. The Dole right here happens to be a circle, so he's going to move along the white arrow because the circle is on the white bar. We're going to look for the white arrow. We're going to see the Dole is going to move all the way over to Miskatonic University streets. Then we're going to look for any squares or any diamonds. The cultists are moons. Our ghoul here happens to be a hexagon, so he's not going to move. That's going to end the monster movement, and now we get to read the rest of the card, which is a headline. Now this headline card says, Lodge members watch the night. All monsters in the French Hill streets, which is right here, or locations, which are these 2 places right here, are returned to the cup. Unfortunately, there's no monsters in either one of those locations, so this card doesn't help us as much as we want it to. It's played, it's going to be returned to the draw pile for the Mythos cards, and we're going to end this turn. The first player marker is going to move over to the Joe Diamond, and we're going to move back to the upkeep phase. This video is starting to go pretty darn long, and I already had the tutorial, which was a long video to begin with, so I'm going to cut this pretty quick and kind of skip around here pretty darn quickly just to show you how the rest of the game works. We're going to skip the upkeep phase. We're going to move directly to the movement phase, where during the movement phase, Carolyn Fern herself will have to deal with this witch since she's in a location with the witch. She either has to evade it or she has to fight it. She's going to go ahead and choose to fight it. It doesn't have any horror check on it, so we don't have to make a horror check on it, so we're pretty safe there. We just do a fight check at -3. We're going to go ahead and cast our big spell, the Dread Curse of Azathoth. which is going to require us to make a lore check to see if we successfully cast it. We do succeed in casting it. It's going to cost us 2 sanity to cast the spell. We now have 9 combat dice to fight this creature with, plus our current fight, which is a 2, so we have 11 dice, and we just need 1 success to work it. We already have 3 successes there. We know this creature is defeated. It does have magical resistance, though, which means our spell is going to be at half power, which means instead of rolling 11 dice, we would have only gotten 4 dice for it, plus 2 for our fight for a total of 6, so we still had 1 more die to roll. We still managed to get 3 successes, so this creature is definitely defeated. And that's one thing you have to watch about with creatures. Some of them have special abilities like magical resistance, magical immunity, physical resistance, physical immunity. And the back of the book tells you exactly how to work those out, but basically for magical resistance, if I use a spell to attack her, my spell is going to be at half power. I use a spell just to speed things up to show you how it works. Creature still defeated. It's still a trophy for me to add to Carolyn Fern. We now move to the Arkham encounter phase where Carolyn Fern herself, again, I'm speeding things up. We're skipping Joe Diamond. Sorry, Joe, you're going to have to suffer there just a little bit. Carolyn Fern is going to go ahead and close this gate. She can close this gate because she's explored it, and she has 2 ways she can go ahead and close this gate. One, she can just close the gate by either making a successful lore check or fight check, and in this case we get +1 to the roll because it's an easier gate to close. So since our lore is at 5, if we rolled 6 dice, we need 1 success to close it. If we do, it becomes a gate trophy for us. We can also do a fight check. Our fight is currently at 2, +1 will be 3 dice. Obviously, we're going to do the lore roll because we have a better chance of success. Or we can do what we want to do, which is use our Elder Sign. And basically, the nice thing about an Elder Sign is we don't have to roll at all. We automatically succeed in closing the gate. We gain the gate trophy. The negative to this, though, is that we're going to take 1 point of sanity damage and 1 point of stamina damage whenever we use one of these arcane artifacts to close these gates. It's worth it, though. I'll show you why. While this Elder Sign card is removed from the game, and we have to actually remove it from the game, it's not added back in the draw deck. So once these Elder Sign cards are used up, and again, I think there's only 3 in the basic game, once it's used up, it's gone from the game, so you have to use these very wisely. Elder Signs, though, are extremely powerful cards, and what they actually allow you to do is they allow you to remove 1 Doom token from the Ancient One's Doom track. Now, normally when you close a gate, or when you seal a gate, just by using clue tokens, you draw a Elder Sign token from the draw pile. You don't touch the Doom track for the Great Ancient One. But when you use these Elder Signs to do it, you're actually going to take the Doom token off the Doom track, making it 1 less step away from the Ancient Old One from spawning. You're going to flip it over to its Elder Sign side, and then you're going to add it to the board. And from now on, no gates or monsters can ever spawn at this location. Even if we happen to draw a Mythos card that says spawn another monster and a gate at this location, we're going to ignore that Mythos card, that part of the Mythos card, because again, no gates and no monsters can ever spawn this location ever again. Not only that, if we manage to get 6 Elder Signs across the board, sealing 6 total locations, we do win the game. I think I've shown you enough gameplay for Arkham Horror so you can see just exactly how the game plays. Now, while the tutorial video did run long, again, I knew it would happen because there's lots of idiosyncrasies for the game, lots of minute details and special circumstances for the rules I wanted to cover. You do see that once you understand how the rules go and how the game plays, it actually flows pretty darn quickly. If I would have been sitting here pretty mute and just making the moves, I would have gone through probably 2 or maybe 3 times as many phases as I actually did, and we would have seen a lot more movement on the board. I think this gives you a good idea of what Arkham Horror plays like. I'm going to end the video here and go ahead and start the 3rd video, my full review of Arkham Horror, the board game.